Put that on. Item 7.4, Transport Working Group, Draft Work Programme and Budget. So we've got Phil and Brian to present. Welcome.
Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, a bit of a mundane title, but there's some real gems in there. So maybe if you can indulge me for a couple of minutes, and then, well, Brian's got some things to add, and then we can maybe go to questions.
Yep, that's fine.
So essentially, I gave a paper, I think in February, that gave some direction on what I thought we'd be spending our money on as a working group this year, and some of the big tasks. This paper has basically refined that on steroids, I think, and we've deliberately given you quite a detailed program, so you can see some of the, I guess, intricacies and nuances of what we do, and also maybe to reflect the expanding rail focus that the working group has got, and also to really show you some of the bigger, maybe unbudgeted tasks that we work on as a working group as well. So this is all your staff as well as people like me and Brian. I might just, for the people that have been around the table since the program business case days, I just wanted to give some confidence to the committee that all those items that we discussed back then around making public transport better, about integrating our walking and cycling networks in our future planning, in addressing emissions, in addressing equity, supporting housing affordability. So all the problems we identified back in 2022 are reflected in line items in this program. And if you look at some of in particular, the multimodal corridor studies that we've got down here, and you think back to the presentations that myself and colleagues have given you over the last 3 years on things like freight, on things like PT pathways, on the bus rapid transit proof of concept work, where we really tested the PBC to see whether this bus rapid transit thing could actually work, where we identified stations and stops. All that work, which is for me the core of the original program business case, is represented in those corridor studies, which are going to really, for me, open up a really good 2026 conversation about road space reallocation, about the pathway to bus rapid transit. And that's going to include, I think, for the first time at scale anyway, in our metro area, conversations around managed lanes, so T3s, T4s, shared bus and freight lanes, maybe some really good dynamic use of dynamic lanes and some technologies around that, broadening our bus priority networks, expanding upon the package of bus priority measures that we use, and maybe, and actually with this work, we'll come up with that staged pathway to what's hopefully still a justifiable bus rapid transit system. Over the next maybe 10 to even 30 years, we will give you that direction on where we think our priorities are. And obviously that's going to inform our TP 2027 funding. So without trying to talk for half an hour, for those of us that have been in this room for 4 years, I still think this program, given again that funding isn't our friend right now, we're doing really well to keep that core objectives from that original piece of work going. And next year, we're going to have some fantastic presentations to give whatever this committee morphs into around our future public transport network and how that integrates with everything else. Just before I hand over to Brian, I just wanted to mention in the program itself, you've got a significant emphasis around those corridor studies, but you've also got other things in there like the follow-up work to the zero emission bus work that was mentioned before. That's a crucial part of implementing the MSP recommendations. You've got a requirement to work in with the outcomes of the Southern Links work that's going to happen over the next few months. So we know that whatever falls out of that process, the working group's got a big role to play in supporting that investment. There's some work related to the Huia incorporated in the program, plus lots of other more local bus related and comms related packages. So I still think the core PBC objectives are mentioned in here. And before I just sign off quickly, there is a small piece of work which we're calling the refresh of the PBC message. So essentially, back in the day, back in the program business case days, we did identify, buried in the appendices, what would happen if we didn't do anything. About network performance, around intersection performance. So if we didn't do our really good PT switch, if we didn't address, you know, biking and micromobility as first mile, last mile type processes, and all that stuff still remains true, we're going to have some serious problems. So I'm developing a small piece of work to inform incoming elected member briefing packages for all of us, not just for Hamilton City, that sort of rekindles that message, because everything we said a few years ago is still true. If not, it's even worse. So, and that will have some nice new graphics about our rapid transit network. So just trying to keep that PVC ethos, message, core theme alive. And I'll probably just...
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Just to reiterate what Phil said and add to that, I guess, is that this is a substantial work program for the TWG in 25-26, and the challenge that Phil and I will now have is to deliver on that work program. I just draw members' attention to paragraph 16 in the report, where we talk about the allocation of $200,000 to go towards Huia business cases and the potential impact on that in terms of the program. We've gone through our budgets just recently and looking at what we can afford to do, and we understand that we can fund that $200,000 through carryovers from last year into this year. So the impact on the program won't be as indicated in paragraph 16. We'll be able to do all the work that we originally had planned to do. So there's a slight adjustment to the work plan, adding to, I guess, the task of the TWG over 25-26, if that makes sense.
Okay. Now I've got Sarah then Angela.
Well, thank you very much for this report. Phil, I'm particularly interested in the Clyde Street corridor. We're told it's the busiest one in terms of bus services going down it, and it's been noted as the priority previously by this committee, I believe. My question is is the actual detailed design for any bus lane unfunded? Is that correct? For any actual implementation of any design work?
Working.
Yeah.
Yep.
The detailed design is unfunded. I put it into the program as an unfunded item, but what is funded is the work we just need to do prior to that.
Why do we need to do another study when I thought we'd done a lot of work on Clyde Street already?
There's been a lot of work, in my understanding, done on Clyde Street, but didn't quite have that bus rapid transit flavour. So I think it's just an extra dimension that these corridor studies are doing, also a freight dimension as well that we need to bring in. So I'm not saying it's going to be a huge piece of work. We'll be using every single shred of work that's been already done, and I realise there has been a lot of work done on that corridor. But there are things we need to do, including some economics, to just inform that detailed design process. And I think to give confidence to members that there is actually a project there.
So my concern is that we set ourselves up for failure if we don't have detailed design work done. I know that ideally you'd want to get Whakakotahi co-funding, but I just saw, was that like a shake of the head right there? My concern is, like, when you look at Eastern Pathways and the school link work, we never actually started the real implementation because we took so long doing design, working with to try and get a time to get poles down and things, and then the opportunity passed and then the money was pulled to do any further work for that. And I'm really concerned that if we just do studies and then we get to the next funding round and then we have to ask funding for implementation money for just design, and then we still have to go back again for construction, we potentially lose another opportunity to actually build something, and it gets pushed out further. So is there any way that we could focus in on actually getting one project to the point of study, detailed design, so that we're shovel ready for the next funding round if we were fortunate enough to actually have any money to do something?
Okay. obviously we haven't got a lot of money to play with this triennium. But to answer your question, potentially, but I'd have to probably reallocate some of the funding in this budget. And in terms of what we're doing now, we've taken the direction that we got in that 2022 program business case to say, which of these corridors is probably that we're going to get the best bang for our buck from a future investment. And that was always going to be Te Rapa. So we're focusing on a northern one right now, and also Frankton to Ruakura. So that's the two ongoing projects we're doing. We wanted to start Clyde Street probably January, February. Obviously, we've got to go through a procurement. So in Clyde Street aside, if we wanted to go quicker and move into a detailed design phase, it would probably be on one of those other two corridors. But even then, I'd think it'd be quite a challenge to do it this triennium. So maybe the conversation would become, maybe let's not do the other two. Let's not do Clyde, and let's not do the one that we dropped, which was going to be to the airport. And we focus more on Te Rapa and maybe Ruakura, Frankton, or probably just one, to be honest. And that would be a resourcing challenge. And I don't know whether we've actually got the budget to do a detailed design. It's a good question, but it'll just mean a fundamental change of this program. But
yeah,
I hear you. I guess
the reason for going. So you said Ruakura and Frankton. So what's that? What is that exactly? Is that
Ruakura, Frankton
going along the Cross City Connector?
Yeah, that is exactly the Cross City Connector route. Yes.
That like a harder thing to fix, though. Then like Clyde Street, it seems like you could actually get a win there in terms of being able to fund a relatively contained project. Like, what would be the easier project to actually construct and implement in terms of needing to allocate road space?
Clyde Street would be easier than whatever we're going to come up with in Te Rapa.
Is that like then a better, like, in my view, working on what we can actually achieve funding wise, if it's going to be more realistic funding wise and disruption wise, and in terms of road space allocation? Is it something we could give some thought to around how this program could get us to a place of actually being able to?
Well, I was hoping that we'd be in a position where we get all these multimodal corridor studies done to inform an LTP 2027 conversation and an alignment conversation there. If we wanted to move into a detailed design phase, that maybe one of those corridors before the end of 2027, I think we'd have to go back and have a real good look whether we could actually achieve that.
Yeah.
I think
anyone else?
We just took the guidance from the original PBC, which said Te Rapa and Ruakura, Frankton are where we're going to get most of our benefits from a access to job sense, from a, we're following growth, remember, as well. Obviously, we got Ruakura, we've got, and up north, we've got the Fonterra plan change. So there's lots of good reasons to prioritise things on those corridors. With Clyde, we've already got a fantastic route that's working really well for the Meteor. Yeah, you're quite right. I don't think there's going to be the level of intervention on that corridor that we're going to get. Because remember, for BRT, we're obliterating roundabouts where there's probably going to be some serious land take we're going to need to consider. So these are actually big schemes on sections. For Clyde Street, I think whilst there will be some impacts, it will be easier probably than other corridors. But from a timing perspective within this triennium, I'd have to go back and have a real good programming conversation with my colleagues, I think. Yeah.
And that's probably a good segue, Phil, is that something that, given the issue raised, that the TWG can
absolutely
go
we
away
can look at that. Yeah.
Okay.
And work through.
Thank you, because ultimately we've got a funding constrained environment. We will have to be really realistic in what we can achieve in the next, say, 10 years. And from experience, having projects ready is really important, because you never know when actually an opportunity with funding will then become available. And I've, had the heartbreak of us basically letting things get to the point where that funding disappeared. So it would just be grateful to look into this.
Mm.
And I understand, you know, the broader benefits of, because the Ulster Tarapa corridor, but then we also have significant delays along Clyde Street. And if there's a, you know, a real win that we can get underway to show the success of a bus lane and what it actually does, then that's a good thing too.
Taking direction from Bill, I think let's go away and have a think about that, noting as well what we're going to be coming up with is almost like a 30-year stage scenario. So maybe the win that we're looking for isn't potentially a bus lane; it could be just maybe a T3 or a T4 with a shared freight component that leads on to something bigger.
Yes.
So actually will be really cheap. So the funding implication may not be as significant as we think.
And there's dynamic lanes.
Yeah, curb to curb, that sort of thing.
you know.
We won't be taking land or anything.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. So, okay,
Well, I hear
thank
you,
you
thank you.
for taking that action.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now I've got Angela, Roger and Mayor Adrian in that order.
Jane Minor.
Thank you. Thank you for your work on this and for the paper. I was just going to move the report, keep it brief.
Got this working?
Yes.
You can all hear me. Not that I need a microphone. But thank you for this report. And of course, we're really, really pleased to see that the Cambridge bus service, the local bus service, is included in the work that's going to be done. And I just thought I'd report that yesterday we had the first governance group meeting of Cambridge Connections, which of course is the important reset of looking at the whole of the transportation net, including public transport. So we're really looking forward to integrating the findings of your group into Cambridge Connections and enabling that community feedback and consultation, which is going to be so much of an important inherent part of that program. So we're really looking forward to working with you.
You already are working with us, actually. Katie's been
I
part of our
knew
group.
that, I suppose I should have said, I'm hoping that I will be working with you after October.
Thank you.
We do
Yeah.
not.
There'll be a few of those hopes around the table, Mayor Adrian.
Just from a sort of a stepping back and looking at the bigger picture, I guess there are a lot of challenges, obviously, with public transport with funding, and there'll also be challenges with capacity to do this work as well, because it'll all reflect on rates at the end of the day. Is there do you have a risk register around some of these things as to where your priorities and where the risks sit with some of these? Because it's such a complex beast that
It is.
this is where risk comes into the game as well, and I just sort of wonder where the opportunities are in that space.
I might look to Robert for some of this, but I think in terms of this program itself, we don't have a risk register. We did have one when we were doing the program business case, so maybe that's something that Brian and I need to action. Very, very conscious that there's going to be funding constraints. I guess we're hoping, fingers crossed, there'll be a more sympathetic I know GPS and the funding environment in the next triennium. But we also know that we're going to be up against a lot of other really good projects in the funding around. But I'm always conscious of Susan's predecessors talking to this committee saying you need to get your strategic ducks in a row. This was like 5 years ago, and we did. We did Access Hamilton, we did the MSP program business case, all the investment objectives aligned. Then we did our freight work, we did our PT work, we integrated it with all the PT planning that's going on here. And then the funding environment became not very good for local transport. So I'm kind of hoping that by doing this multimodal corridor study work, linking it back to all the other work we've done, we've got a strong case for investment, even if it's like Councillor Sarah said, on one of those corridors. Use it as a demonstration project. They want to see how good it is. They want to see the adjacent land use exploding when they see this great bus service exploding in a good way. And then maybe the other ones will become easier to fund. It's
it's a bit of chicken
but
and
a risk
egg, isn't
register
it?
we do need to do, and maybe integrate that more into future-proof processes.
I think what you've just said is really assuring, because the thing is there's a strategy, and there is a guiding process there, and it's just doing what is affordable really at the end of the day and picking the winners. That's you've assured me in that respect around the risks and stuff.
Well, the beauty of
It is what it is.
it is what it is.
There's no money to throw around. People don't want to see extra rate rises. And this is where, when the more studies you do, if they don't get enacted straight away, that's a cost that's sunk then. And yes, there's an element of planning, but it's trying to do things follow the process and do things in the right stages. Because we all can't go on hopes and dreams. We've got a reality check here, unfortunately, and it's a real challenge. But thanks for that. Yeah, I think what you just said then was assuring.
Thank you.
Jen?
Thank you, Chair. On that note and the inefficiency that comes from that, that misalignment between central and local government and aspirations and things, it's more of a curiosity question, but hopefully it's interesting to all in the room. It's that dependency that local government has on NZTA match funding is obviously something that really constrains our ability to shape our communities the way that we want them. Is there anybody looking at how the funding model for public transport could be different in the future? I'm just noting there's a lot of, discussion and changing of laws around rucks at the moment, and that obviously goes into the NLTF. And if it's, obviously you might think there might be a party policy group that might be giving it some thought, but is there anybody, like, for example, all the knowledgeable people in this working group who give their mind to it, or is there a regional sector alternative? And if not, do you have a suggestion of where it would be great for that to come from? Because one day I would love for us to step beyond this issue. Yeah. Any thoughts?
I know there have been, and I might, sorry, look to Robert here, there have been some funding and finance in specific work streams as part of future-proof. Where they currently stand, I'm not too sure. Sorry.
I have to come to the mic.
Come to the
Right.
table, Robert.
Thanks. Yeah, just to go towards, I suppose, a more independent way of giving us that.
That's a good question.
I wanted to start with a pun by saying that's the $64 billion question.
Yeah.
So within the context of future-proof, we're certainly looking at, and we've got in our program that we're bringing back to FPIC next month, we're looking at setting aside some money to start investigating how we could attract investment for others' voices to deliver our program.
So private investment.
Private investment and how that works.
That's great.
Yeah, so we're looking at that. And then at a national level, obviously MOT is doing another review of the GPS. The whole review of RUC is wrapped up in a funding of the transport system review that the Ministry of Transport are doing. So it's
Are you not aware of Ministry of Transport actually having like a work stream on this particular, moving away from match funding requirement?
I think it's wrapped up in their ongoing work stream,
Sure.
but I don't think it's specifically about the match funding thing. It's about how do you fund the whole transport system.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, fingers crossed they might come up with something. But if we're sitting like this,
I mean,
at some point we might need to look at providing some leadership on this to move something forward. Yeah.
We're kind of in a place where the NLTF and the use of fuel tax is not sufficient to fund
especially grand
capital, let alone service improvements. And so we've got to find a different funding model. I could start speculating about where that might go, but the kinds of questions that are being asked are things like, well, maybe the NLTF's focus should be on OPEX and asset management, and improvements should be funded from some other source. That kind of question, it's been live for the last 15 or 20 years, but we're getting to the crunch point where there's no more headroom for capital projects. So.
Hope the crunch point leads to somewhere. Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Don't appear to be. Okay, if we move to the recommendation before us, in terms of receiving the report, it's been moved by Angela. If I can have a seconder, please. Eugene. If there's nothing further, I'll put. Sorry. Can you press your.
We go. Could we please note a staff action if you haven't already in regard to looking into the question I asked? Because we're signing off the work program, but there's kind of like but we've also asked for investigation into whether there's a different approach.
So reprioritiser programs reflects trying to get a detailed design on one of these corridors done a bit quicker.
Yeah, whether just to discuss it, whether it's something that
we can do.
Yeah, could do and would recommend doing if you'd give thought to it.
Or is that better just noted as part of the minutes?
Yeah, like noting is, yeah,
Yeah.
if it's, as long as it's noted somewhere, it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise it could become quite a, yeah, so we'll have that noted. Thanks.
And would that mean you'd have to come back to us again if you looked at that? That mean?
Yeah, I guess I would.
Mm.
I'm just about to go on holiday as well, so I'm
So we're saying that potentially there's a change to the work program because of this, and what I sort of call this is a pathway to benefits realisation for this work. So you get to the point where we're actually delivering something, which is what you're saying. But whether that's a question like for Phil and I to go away with the group to consider, and if that means a change to the work program, then potentially I think we need to come back. But that's something for us to
and come back to whatever the arrangements are post. Post the election and the new triennium.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's moved. Oh, sorry, what's?
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Chair. Look, yes, Sarah, I support exactly what you're saying. So that's just just for our clarity. That's just looking at the TWG, looking at different options to maybe have a shovel-ready project. Yeah, whether that's Clyde Street or a shovel-ready project. So yeah, I absolutely support that. WDC did that during the enhanced annual plan, and we just got some projects ready to go once the funding was attached and we could get on with it. So that's good.
Okay. Okay, we have that recommendation before us. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Now, I'm not sure whether you'll be here at the end of the meeting, Phil, but given it's, in case you're not, just like to acknowledge you and the team in terms of your input over the life of the subcommittee, and have a great break, which is probably well deserved. So enjoy. We'll move on to item 7.5, and that's the Te Huia Passenger Rail Customer Satisfaction Survey Report. And welcome to James, who's going to comment on the report. We'll take it as read. And James, if you can obviously highlight those matters you want to bring to the subcommittee's attention. Over to you.
Kia ora, that's the one. It's red for go. Kia ora, councillors, and kia ora, Chairman Bill. Thanks very much for the opportunity to just run you through some highlights of this customer satisfaction survey report. So this report is based on a survey that's done every year. And this year, a total of 498 people were interviewed, customers of Te Huia. And the biggest headline of the report is clearly the overall customer satisfaction result in terms of the percentage of customers satisfied with Te Huia, which stands at 98%, which is an incredible achievement. Once again, the the staff, particularly on the train, and also everyone working behind the scenes to make Te Huia what it is, should be very, very proud that that level of customer satisfaction has been achieved. Given the challenges that Te Huia continues to have with service disruptions as a result of infrastructure challenges across the network. So that really does need to be noted as a magnificent achievement. But the interesting thing about this report is that it does actually then dive down into quite a lot of detail. And if you like bar charts, this is certainly the report for you. And I just want to pull out a few just to give you a little bit of a sense of some of the interesting issues that are actually behind the numbers. So starting on page 117 of your agenda, there is quite an interesting chart about the quality of the trip and the different service attributes that make up Te Huia. And firstly, you can see how many there are. So there's an awful lot that goes into running a rail service. But the chart shows from right to left the satisfaction with particular aspects of the service. So on the right-hand side, you've got the highest level of satisfaction. So the helpfulness and attitudes of the staff is the top one. So again, that just shows how good those staff actually are. And there's a lot of those service attributes that achieve over 85%, which are all the ones that are shown in green. Things like personal safety, really important for public transport, that people feel safe. That's very, very high for Te Huia. Comfort and cleanliness of the train. So all of those service aspects, really, really good. At the other end of the spectrum, there are some challenges still, particularly with the Wi-Fi and the cafe. But, those figures actually in percentage terms are still pretty good. So although not as many people are satisfied, we wouldn't want to say that everyone is dissatisfied. That's actually very far from the truth. So that just gives you a really interesting snapshot as to the level of satisfaction with those different service attributes. The next three slides I want to draw your attention to are on pages 119 to 121, and these are attitudinal questions about what passengers feel are important in terms of the Te Huia service offer. So on page 119, frequency of service is the service attribute, and passengers are given effectively a 1 to 10 rating. So 1 being very important, 10 being really not bothered. So what it shows is that for service frequency, if you take the top 3 importance ratings from 1 to 3, 61% view are in those 3 categories. So frequency as an importance factor is very, very high. Moving on to the next one, which is trip duration, or perhaps more accurately, it's how long does the journey actually take? That actually goes down, interestingly, to 43%. So still high, but frequency is viewed as being of more importance than simply trip duration. And the good thing about Te Huia is you can actually do productive work on the train. So even though some people say the service is relatively slow, actually people don't mind so much because they can do productive work, read a book, look out the window and relax, which you can't necessarily do when you're driving on the motorway. So that's an interesting one. And the last one I wanted to draw attention to in this series is around service reliability. And again, that's very important. So, nearly 2/3 of customers are in the categories or importance categories 1 to 3. No one wants to be late, to wait for a train that doesn't turn up, and no one wants their service to be cancelled. So reliability really is as important as frequency. And all this will become very clear when we start to talk about some of the issues relating to the future of the service in a subsequent report. Just a couple of other things to pull out before I finish. Page 125. So value for money, not surprisingly, is very important. And given the relatively good value for money costs of Te Huia, even with recent fare increases, it's good to see that value for money is highly regarded, and that's something that we're always aspiring to achieve on any service that we run. And the last one I want to draw attention to is on actually page 140, which is, well, what would make me as a passenger use the train more? Because clearly we're keen to get not only more people using the train, but more of our passengers to use it more often. And so the top answer to this is the Sunday service. And lo and behold, 3 weeks ago, we have introduced a Sunday service. So that's really good to see that very important service feature for passengers has now been introduced. Faster journey time and more weekday services are also important, along with cheaper fares. So there's some really interesting data in there about how we may look to improve the service in the future, which we'll talk about perhaps in a bit, as to where we should focus some of our priorities. Lots and lots of other graphs. I'm happy to talk through any of them at your leisure or now. So please feel free to ask any questions and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, James. Roger.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Really, really great and interesting information, and thank you for that. We just found a lot of interest on page 144, if you want to have a look at that, and the data that shows that very few people outside of Hamilton are actually using the service. And when you think about the article that appeared in the paper about a lot of professionals are actually working in Hamilton, living in places like Cambridge, could well be working in Auckland. And whether there's a little bit of a further aspect in the survey that could identify why those people who are not using the service are not using it. Is it because of accessibility? Is it because of timing? I think those kind of would be really interesting for us to know how better we can link in with that service.
Yeah, through the chair, I think that's a really, really good point. We are certainly very interested to understand where people come from and why they travel, and most importantly, how they access that service. So we do ask questions about mode of travel, and most people either travel by car or are dropped off. And one of the things we are looking to do for the future is to understand how we can better improve access, whether that's through getting more buses to intersect with trains, improving walking and cycling arrangements, all those kinds of things. We're very much interested in, if we're able to move to a service where the trial becomes permanent, because one of the challenges we've had is, of course, to who it is a trial. So we have to be mindful about how much we invest in what is a temporary service versus what we'd ideally like to do if the service was permanent. So I think that's a really, really good point and very important to consider.
I think you hit on a really valid point when you said that, a lot of professional business people, they get on the train and the computer comes out and they're spending the 2 hours actually really involved in their work, which means the time is productive. And maybe we emphasize that value that's there.
I agree. Thank you. Yes.
Yep.
Eugene, then Angela, then Jen.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, James. Very good report, good information. And I this particular thing I've raised with Phil this week, and he's followed it up for me, so thanks, Phil. But just the website, there's no services there over the school holidays, and the website doesn't correlate with the link on that website to go to AT Network, which has a different reason for what doesn't have a reason for why the service is not happening. So I think our website does say that it's a block of line problem, which has been a bit of a thorn in our side since the start of the service. So and hopefully I think it's getting near the end of that. So it sort of just corresponded with the heavy investment in the AT network, rail network. So but just if we check that, because I've had a bit of feedback publicly that they get a bit lost on why there isn't a service on holidays. So.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for that that observation, and we'll follow that up just to make sure, because one thing we want to do is make it easy for people to understand how to use the service, getting back to the previous comment. Thank you.
Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks, James, for taking us through those graphs. That was really interesting. I suppose for me, Wi-Fi, cafe, and the volume of the announcements, if that's something that we're consistently hearing, to me, the cafe is a quick one. Range of food, quality of food, price of food. Is that something that KiwiRail is directly responsible for?
Through the chair, yes, that's right. I mean, KiwiRail, as the service operator, effectively provide the menu choices, the pricing, and all of that type of stuff. Yes, that's correct. I mean, as the service commissioner, I guess we're always looking to try and understand and improve. And there are a cohort of people that perhaps not quite as satisfied as we'd ideally like. So I think that is something that we would be looking to discuss with our colleagues to just understand what more we can do, because it is about making the whole experience as pleasurable as possible. If one thing lets it down, then all the other great stuff can be perhaps forgotten about. So it is really important we don't just think, well, let's say it's the way with most stuff, so we'll be all right. We're always looking to improve. So we can certainly have a look at that and do further investigation, and again, hopefully come up with some solutions.
Yeah, and the Wi-Fi?
Yeah, through the chair, the Wi-Fi is an interesting one. Perhaps Phil knows more about this than I. It was certainly a big part of the discussions and work when we were setting Huia up. And one of the challenges we had was to get a level of Wi-Fi that was good enough for people to work, but didn't mean there was opportunity for people to sort of stream videos and do all that sort of stuff that costs a lot more money. So we were always trying to get a balance between functionality and people's desire to do absolutely anything they want to, looking at cat videos or whatever it might be. So I think with Wi-Fi, if we're moving into again into a permanent service, that is something that I think we will look at again. To understand, is it just there are some people who are not satisfied that they can't do absolutely everything they want, or actually is it there are people who are using the service for what we would say are more legitimate purposes, but are not getting the service they require. I think that latter group, we do need to make sure that business people can get on and do emails and look at stuff and have good fast connectivity. So I think, anything else you want to add to that, Phil, or not?
You just turn off your mic. Thanks, James.
So those three topics have been the same three topics since the very first survey, and this is a question that we get asked every year, and we do continue to work on that. The Wi-Fi is constrained, as it has been since day one, by the speed of the mobile network alongside the train. So the train picks up the 4G, 5G along the route, and there is still the same dead spots in that there were on day one. We have talked to the network providers about that multiple times, but that hasn't resulted in any action. We see, we get reports through of how many people are logging on and what's going on, and it's consistently high. So many people are using Wi-Fi every single day, every single week. Yeah. The technology is the constraint in that one. The onboard announcements has a conversation that's had with the onboard crew frequently, and well, exactly. It seems to be both. And sometimes it's a pre-recorded message and sometimes it's an announcement from the onboard team. But either way, it is often either too loud or too quiet. And it's very hard to know exactly what the right volume is for that. And I think that's why it has stayed on here all the way through. The cafe, we over time bring up with the team, and we have made adjustments to the range and the types of food available over time based on our understanding of what customers want. And frequently the cafe completely sells out food and drink, so it's very popular. Hugely constrained for space is the issue, and the team are doing whatever they can with the tools available to them, but there's a real limit to what can be achieved. but that, because the revenue through the cafe has been so strong, it is actually a really important part of the service, and keep improving that as we can.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, understand the space constraints and yeah, you can't really, it's not like a full kitchen or anything. So I think they do well with the facilities that they do have. I wonder with the Wi-Fi if there's more education for passengers around what's possible with the Wi-Fi when they sign on, like if you want to watch a movie, maybe download it at home. Yeah.
There's always more we can do. Yeah.
Yep. Just a couple more things. Noting Frankton bus connections is something that we are often contacted about. Also understanding that we're in a funding constrained environment. So yeah, I think just moving forward when Te Huia does move into the continuous program that this is something either through on demand or Frankton bus pulling off when they know the train's going to be there. The other thing as well, the number of people driving or leaving their cars at stations, just about the park and ride security at both Frankton, Rotukoti and Huntly. Yeah, if we can just be cognizant of that as well. But overall, yeah, fantastic survey results and yeah, good work.
I've got Jen, then Maxine.
Thanks. Last point on the Wi-Fi is, yeah, I mean, the dead spots, even just when you're driving in the car and in that kind of area, and it's just incredible that we don't have better Wi-Fi in general in the Hamilton to Auckland corridor. Perhaps, because I know that rural access to digital connection is a key topic our chair is very interested in. I wonder whether we could do anything to join up with others who also really want to push for that, so that it ourselves, something to have a think about and have a chat with her about perhaps. And then I thought it was really interesting that the quality of the stations isn't a high priority for people, and so something for my colleagues at Waikato District to really think about, because I know we've talked about a range of quality or yeah, effort to put in, and to really have the evidence that people just want to get on and off, and they just want the stop much more than they want. And I realise that even in Hamilton there is discontent with the amount of money that was spent, the capital that was spent on the Rotokauri upgrade. Mindful that that's obviously for a very long-term intention, but when it's for a trial, or I'm always going to call it a startup service, it was a hard number to accept, I suppose. But long may Te Huia live, and so that will make sense in the long run. And then, do we have an equivalent of this survey for the buses? I feel like I shouldn't have to ask this question. I'm sure I've read it at some point, but it's late in the training.
We do. So under the requirements of NZTA, we have to undertake a survey for public transport services annually. So we do a bus survey.
I'm sure I have read it. Yeah.
And aspects of that are reported through the annual reporting and their quarterly reporting to council. Yeah,
I did see something, but it might be more aggregated rather than so detailed that I didn't remember it. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Maxine.
Thank you. Thanks for the report. It's pretty clear that people love Te Huia and the offering that it brings for our community. So well done on continuing that really high number. God, I don't know any other reports that come to us as a council and elected members that have 98, 99, 98% satisfaction. So, oh my gosh. Big fat pat on the back. Always an opportunity for improvements, and here Councillor Angela's discussion around the cafe offering. I had an understanding also that we got a cut of the profit of that. Is that something that's a real, or did I imagine that?
No, we do. It's a trying to think of the right phrasing, but there's a commercial model there. Yes, we do.
Okay, cool. Yep, thanks. Thank you, thank you. Not kind of the profit, but yes, I understand. So I wondered whether, if that's something that's really important to people, what kind of opportunity we have for that at stations. And I realise that people want to be able to get to the train and get on it, but they will arrive early. And do we have something kind of licensing for food trucks or a coffee cart at some of those stations this side of the Bombays, to be able to make those offerings so that you get on with your cup and your muffin or whatever else, and that that can deal with that kind of range and quality and whatever else, that you don't have to have packaged and refrigerated or reheated, or try and deal with that on board. And is there the opportunity to be able to do that in the environs around the stations?
I think the short answer to that is yes, there's always opportunities.
Mm.
The Kiwi Rail have opened up a cafe in the signal house at the Strand station. There are varying
Yes, I've been there.
degrees of success, and that's an example of something that's come about by more trains going through the Strand daily than just the Northern Explorer. Yes, I think there's always opportunity.
Yeah. And I guess with also Councillor Angela's response around the Wi-Fi, managing expectation, I think is something really important for people getting on and using it.
I think perhaps part of the issue is that people, when they think of Wi-Fi, they think of the speed of the system they have at home.
Yep.
And if they were on a 4 or a 5G connection, they would expect that service to be different. Challenge is in the branding and the expectation of performance, I think. And that's I think that was the
I've been on the channel and there was virtually zero. I mean, while they talk about having access to Wi-Fi, it was virtually zero. So, if they'd said that somewhere in their promo, I wouldn't have expected to be able to get on it. Thank you. That's it from me. Good work. And second Jennifer's motion on Te Huia forever.
You're Adrian.
Yeah, it's a great report because it's got so much information there, and just what I took from it is that there are people travelling from Auckland.
Thanks for raising that again.
Always
really appreciate it.
Yeah, that's a key piece here, that it's not just people leaving the Waikato to get to Auckland. There is a little bit of the reverse happening. And just really curious, just to flesh out, obviously the private car, the park and ride type scenarios that are going on, and I guess, and again, where people are coming from, because obviously this is all encompassing. You don't know whether there are people travelling from Cambridge to Frankton or Morrinsville to Frankton to catch a train, or Te Awamutu to Frankton, because that's where the park and ride philosophy is quite good to understand, because obviously people that might be getting on at Huntly could be coming from a rural area, it's really breaking some of those things down, and to understand which way they're going too, because could be both ways. But there's some great information there, and I guess as time goes by we'll dig deeper. I guess the challenge around food being at a station comes down to economic viability, and while there's only a train there every few hours, there might be a coffee cart might park up there for that first train in the morning. I don't know, that might be and then they move somewhere else. Yeah, because to have something fixed there, I'd say would be very challenged to be an economic. It comes down to frequency, and that that's where they can do it in Auckland and the Strand. But great report, really interesting, and great to see some success there.
No further questions or comments. Anything in conclusion, James?
Thank you, Chair. I just, again, I think want to emphasise the amazing success that Te Huia has in terms of those customer attitudes, and it's something that we really do want to try and then now take to the next level when we're looking at future service improvements. We're really conscious that people do have a choice, and we want to give them the best choice possible. So I think doing this survey every year really does give us such rich data that we can now use for our future service planning, on which we'll be talking about pretty shortly. So thank you.
Okay, if I can have a mover and seconder for receipt of the report. Maxine, someone to second that. Thanks, Jen. Nothing further. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. James, you're doing the next one in terms of Huia Passenger Rail end of trial review update. So that starts on page 151 of the agenda. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair Bill. And yes, this report, although it is titled End of Trial Review Update, actually encompasses quite a lot more information about all the work that is currently going on in terms of planning for the future of Te Huia. So if we start with a pretty important table on page 153 of your agenda, this table sets out the summary of performance against the targets that have been set for Te Huia. And for the latest year, which is clearly 2025, we've used data up to the end of June, so only 6 months worth of data. Overall, what the table shows is that in the last 2 years in particular, Te Huia has met the majority of its targets, and actually for targets 1A and 1B around the average weekday demand and the average Saturday demand, they've met those for the last 3 years, and that is in spite of all of the challenges that have been referred to previously. The one target that you'll see in red and has been consistently red has been the amended target 1C, which is an increase in the average weekday demand to 400 trips per day. When that target was agreed about 3 years ago now, there was an expectation that to meet that target, there would need to be some fairly significant service improvements. And whilst it is true that services have improved in that time, so we have now additional Saturday services, additional services on Thursday and Friday, and now Sunday. The challenge that Te Huia continues to have is around the number of days when there is significant service disruption. And starting with the block of line at the end of 2024 and moving into 2025, there have been a large number of days when Te Huia was scheduled to run and has simply not been able to run. We've counted 53. So what that means is those are 53 days when we've not been able to get any revenue in for that service. What's compounding the issue is that those days are generally school holidays. And historically, those have been some of the most popular services in terms of the number of people on. So it's not just the number of days that the service doesn't run, it's those days where we actually have the most patronage that are being most effective. So that, in our view, explains a lot of the challenges we have around the decline in patronage for the first 6 months of 2025 compared to the year 2024. So that is something to be aware of, and we can only hope and expect that as we move forward, those blocks of line will become fewer in number and we'll be able to run services all year round, because that's what people expect. Running a service when there are a couple of weeks when it doesn't operate and then it starts again and then it stops again at the next holiday, that doesn't instill as much long-term confidence as we would ideally like. So, moving forward into the future, we are very, very, very keen to ensure we have that confidence. So importantly then, the end of trial review is the key piece in the jigsaw here in terms of the future for Te Huia as a permanent service. So we will be commencing very shortly an end of trial review report, which will contain not only the data that you see in table 1, but also a lot of other data including some of those other targets that are listed in paragraph 16, but also data around more generally how the service has operated in terms of its efficiency and effectiveness. So one thing we're not short of here is data. We have lots of it, and the challenge will be to put that data into a compelling investment case, a story for NZTA to make a decision around the future service. So we have two key dates for you to be aware of. The first of those is the December 2025 NZTA board meeting. At that meeting, we'll be taking an update on the current KPIs and targets and submit an interim report. The purpose of that meeting is really just to make NZTA board members aware of the current situation in terms of progress against the targets and to warm them up to their next meeting, which will be in March 2026 or thereabouts. And that is when we will submit the final complete end of trial review report. And that's when NZTA ultimately, as a board, will make a decision around future co-funding and therefore the future of the service. So of all the work that's going on at the moment, and there is a lot going on at the moment, the end of trial review and all the data that we're pulling together from a Power BI dashboard we're putting together is really critical to that objective of keeping Te Huia as a permanent service. So that's the end of trial review. Other things we're doing, the next one is really, really critical. So one of the very important aspects of rail is safety. And rail is a very, very safe mode of travel. And the reason for that is that there are very, very exacting standards about rail safety. And we're working very closely with Kiwi Rail on extension of the service running rights, which actually expire at the end of April 2026. And NZTA, as the regulator, need to provide agreement to continue operating the Te Huia service beyond them. And there are two key aspects to the safety case. The first is to investigate and take action around the crashworthiness of carriages, which are ex-1970s British Rail Mark II, so designed to different standards that you would have today. But nevertheless, Kiwi Rail assure us they are actually very robust. The main challenge is they don't have the modern day crumpling capabilities that trains have now. So if there was ever a crash, those trains are, they're built to last and they don't crumple very easily. So Kiwi Rail are doing a lot of work around the couplers between the trains to understand how, in the unlikely event of a crash, and it is unlikely, that the consequences can be minimised, in particular one carriage mounting and then going through another carriage. That's the thing we really do want to avoid. So please be assured that Kiwi Rail are working very hard to some very exacting safety standards and will be undertaking that work over the next few months. The other aspect is the locos and the fact that they are now being fitted with a new upgraded safety system called ETCS, which is essentially an ability to monitor the speed of the train and to automatically reduce that speed if there is concern that the train might go through a red signal because it's going too quickly. So that's work that's being undertaken again by Kiwi Rail. It's something that the whole rail industry across New Zealand is starting to implement, and Te Huia will actually be one of the first to actually run that on locos. So again, that work is being undertaken as we speak. The locos are starting to be fitted very shortly, and all of this is coming together for what's called a so far as is reasonably practicable assessment that Kiwi Rail submit to the rail regulator, who then will hopefully give us the green light to continue beyond the end of April 2026. Other things to make you aware of then, if we get the approval from NZTA to continue Te Huia as a permanent service, it will need to be put into the continuous programme. So there is work going on to understand what's needed for that and how that implicates for things like future service contracts with KiwiRail. So there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes going on there. But one key issue is the local share for Te Huia. And given that the NZTA board have said quite clearly, firstly, there'll be no more money from NZTA than we have currently in terms of co-funding. And secondly, that the FAR will reduce from, well, 75.5 when Te Huia started down to 51. That means that the local share from non-NZTA will need to increase. One option, of course, is to get a greater contribution or a contribution from Auckland, but there will need to be work done to understand what implications that local share increase will have for ratepayers. And so through the annual plan process, there will be ultimately a consultation on the future local share for Te Huia. So a lot of work is going on to understand what are our future costs, what are our future revenues, and therefore what is the level of funding we need to keep the existing service going. The next one is a future services business case. So looking ahead a few years, as we mentioned earlier, service frequency is very highly prized, as is journey speed, and as is reliability, and as is access. So one challenge we have at the moment is the lack of stations that Te Huia serves, particularly in the area north of Huntly, between Huntly and Pukekohe. And so we're looking at a future services business case, which is essentially seeking to understand what the future optimal service pattern should be in terms of number of trains per day or per hour, the journey speed, what would be ideal to be competitive with a private car, and where new stations ought to be located to maximise the access that people have to the network, back to the point that was made in the previous paper. All of those aspects we're looking at through a business case that we're going to be developing over the next 9 to 12 months or so. And so what we're looking at for the future then is how do we take those improvements into a permanent service. They certainly won't be ready from day one, but sometime in the future we'd be looking to increase that service frequency and ultimately get a lot more people using the train and paying to use the train. So ensuring that we get a lot of more revenue in for our services from passengers is very, very important. The last thing I want to say before I finish is around new trains. So those ex-British Rail Mark II carriages have done Stirling service, and if NZTA provide approval, then running rights should exist until about 2030, 2031. But those trains won't last forever. And so there will be a need to order new trains, new rolling stock. And given the lead times for rolling stock are generally around 5 years, then there is a need to look at the future level of service provision and therefore how many trains we may need. If the service stays as it currently is, we'll need 3. If we move to a more frequent service, we could need anything between 8 and 10, depending on how frequent the service actually is. So at the moment, the intent is to try and work closely with the likes of Greater Wellington, who are ordering 18 trains at the moment for the Palmerston North and Wairarapa lines, and to see whether there are opportunities to piggyback on that procurement process, because one thing train manufacturers don't like are very, very small orders. They like big orders for obvious reasons. So we're working very hard with colleagues at national level as well to see whether there are opportunities for funding those trains in whatever number that we would ideally like. So that really, I think, is hopefully a reasonably brief summary, even though it seems like we've been talking for a long time. So perhaps I should keep quiet now and let some questions flow. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, James. Roger.
You're
Okay. Can you press your button now?
When you talked about crash readiness, it made me remember back to the fact that in the 70s, early 70s, I was actually working for Brush Electrical Engineering Company and could have actually manufactured some of those carriages. So I'm sure that they will be good and fine.
Okay, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you, James. So many questions, but I'll try and be really succinct. The patronage for the Sunday services so far. Any
I have some figures. Yes. So the service has been running for 3 Sundays now. So the first Sunday, it was 127 both ways. The next week it was 99, and then last weekend was 98.
Cool.
So yeah, between 100 and 130. So not bad for a start, but clearly we'd like that to at least continue, if not slightly improve. We've had challenges with Sunday service in terms of the time. The time is probably not what we'd ideally like. We'd probably like it a bit earlier, but we've had to fit in around maintenance windows. So actually, I think we're pretty pleased with that figure, considering it's a single train per day. One of the interesting things I do want to understand is perhaps how over time the Sunday service might impact the Saturday as well, because people may come back on different days, and so the Sunday service makes Saturday travel in either direction and come back on the Sunday more viable, and indeed Friday as well, actually. So yeah, I'll try and do some, well, I won't do it, but our analysts will do some work to see whether there's some wider benefits to other services from that Sunday as well.
Considering the short time frame to the December interim report and the final report, is there anything else we're doing to boost just comms that is happening? Because my experience is I saw the initial announcement, but is there anything happening to help us speed up the usual trend that we see, which is to actually increase?
Well, yes is the short answer. So there is another batch of marketing material being prepared now.
At least social media or something.
It starts with that, yes.
Yeah.
The difficulties of the timeframes for this last few months of service has not lost on us either, and we had wanted to do this earlier in terms of the Sunday service, but the whole conversation has ended up requiring use of the reserve funding, which has required annual plan decisions, and that's required then fitting around kiwi rails, line closures, and
I mean, as long as the line trends up, which is what it usually does.
We'll have had 12 months of operating by the end of June next year, but at the time that the agency makes its decisions, it will be less than that.
Okay, thanks. And then, do we understand enough from the conversations we've had what the barriers are to with Auckland Council? Because once we know what those barriers are, we can obviously work on them.
Yeah, through the chair, I think the challenge that the Auckland Council and AT have, as with any council, is priorities, and they've got a huge public transport network to operate, and relatively speaking, Huia is a small part of that. So I think if you take the view that they're most interested and concerned with getting their network operating as efficiently, effectively as possible, and CRL, I think they would take the view that that's their priority. But having said that, there is, I think, some openness to discussing potential arrangements, because if we can make a good case, and I think we can make a good case, that Huia does benefit Auckland, and we've actually done a bit of work recently to try and quantify some of those benefits, which we'll be happy to share once we've finalised it. I think we can actually say to Auckland Council and Auckland Transport, yes, Huia does need to be and can be part of your metro arrangement, because it can take some people off trains otherwise might be more crowded. So Pukekohe particularly is an interesting case. There are people who use Huia preference to the metro service. So I think it's just keeping the conversation going and giving Auckland Transport and Auckland Council, better evidence about what the benefits are, and we're starting to do that now. And I think it's just one of those things that I'm loath to criticise any council for, spending yet more money and supporting us, but I do think that we can make a really strong case, particularly when we move forward into more frequent services and faster services, that that contribution will increase. So yeah, we'll keep the conversation going.
Something that just occurred to me is that, and we obviously have a consultation early next year for our annual plan for what people are willing to pay. Are we envisaging that Auckland Council might include that as a consultation item, or will that be in subsequent years? And is there anything stopping us surveying Aucklanders for their willingness to pay and providing that information to Auckland Council? I'm mindful there's a stepping on toes possibility, but if it was a simple survey versus a consultation, local government format, then thoughts?
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, I think there's no reason in principle why we can't ask our passengers, who include Aucklanders, that issue, and also people who are not passengers. And that, I guess, is one of the key challenges.
Comes to Roger's point of the
yeah, is that there are people out there who I suspect would be interested in using Te Huia if there was, a service that met their needs, or if they felt that it was a price that they were willing to pay, and all those kinds of things. I mean, I certainly think we'd want to do any work, with Auckland Council on that. And maybe that's a way forward, is to actually say, hey, why don't we just do a bit of work here just to understand these future benefits.
I'm remembering the pre-engagement work we did as regional council public transport rating model. So if we did some pre-engagement type initial data, so that proper engagement could be quality. Yeah. All right, then the very last one was that far rate is obviously quite a barrier for us even here at this regional council. And I'm mindful that the Greater Wellington Regional Council has a different one yet again. Are we doing any advocacy, this is more to Phil probably, with both the opposition and the current Minister of Transport, which is a new Minister of Transport from when the GPS was set, same party I get, but now we also have a Minister of Rail, to re-look at that far rate, if not for the coming annual plan situation, but perhaps for the next NLTF. Yeah, it's just, and obviously, I should really direct it at NZTA to some degree. I know you can't probably say a lot about it, but there's something we should be doing in that space, perhaps too.
It's the board, I think, that actually will make that decision.
True.
So
It
probably
is.
not our minister, but it doesn't hurt to talk to our minister, definitely. As you say, he's a new minister. We're not sure what the new GPS will look like, whether it will vary from our current one.
We never do.
That's a bit of a hard one.
I'll just take away, it's worth doing some advocacy, whether it's with the board, whether it's with the ministers, to just keep looking at things, because it was quite a sharp pivot in the, the staging was appreciated, but just mindful it might not sit where it is currently forever, and mindful that with the rates pressure and the talk of rates capping and everything else, it's a constantly moving feast. Thanks.
Oh. So yes, I think we are advocating strongly with government for Te Huia in a range of different ways, and will continue to do so. The success we achieved in having something other than the normal far rate for this service came about through very strong leadership, political leadership. And if we want to achieve anything other than a subsuming into the national levels, we'll all need that again, alongside everything else that we're doing.
Happy to help from around, Phil.
Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question around the timing, I suppose, of our annual plan consultation alongside the March NZTA board meeting. Just chicken and egg, which comes first?
Yes, through the chair, that has crossed my mind. I've got a giant Gantt chart, beloved of all program managers, which is looking at all of the different dependencies across those. And yes, clearly there are some some challenges around that. I think from my perspective, it is really critical to understand, NZTA board, as our co-funder, their position. They're critical to this. So for me, the end of trial review and demonstrating to the board that Te Huia has been a success and a good use of the money that they have co-funded is really critical. Without that, we're going to struggle to have a service. It then becomes a question of what is the local share willing to fund? Are we willing to match NZTA if they back us and say, right, okay, let's keep the service going and let's start to improve it over time. So my focus really is on NZTA, but very conscious there's lots and lots of things we need to do in parallel. And I guess that's one of the issues, isn't it? Is just making sure that people understand that whatever they're paying isn't just them that are paying, there are others as well. And everyone is trying to make what's a fair contribution, I guess you'd say, back to the Auckland debate as well.
Thanks for that.
Maxine.
Yeah, thank you. Putting my mind to the end of trial report, there'll be some storytelling to be made, which can, I guess, encompass the points that have just been made. But also, I would imagine that there's the opportunity for us to demonstrate the benefit of having further stations. And I'm thinking of Pukekohe as a way to be able to show the additional ridership and benefit for not just Waikato, but wider. And then also, well, that first. So not just advocating to Auckland, but to through the business case as well. Comments on the value of that?
Yeah, through the chair, it is absolutely essential that although the NZTA board is, concerned with performance against those targets that we've set out in our report, there is a wider story to be told about the wider implications and benefits for Te Huia. So in the 5-year review, very much as in the 2-year review, we are trying to look at the wider picture and demonstrate that different people in different areas are all receiving some benefit from the service, and telling that story, and also bringing in things like the customer satisfaction information, and highlighting that there are a proportion of people who use Te Huia because they don't have any other choice. There's lots of nuggets in the data, some of which I set out in that previous report, that we can bring in. The challenge will be to actually not put too much in, and then you lose the story. So, I'm very conscious that story needs to be told in a way that's clearly convincing for NZTA, but also for our ratepayers and also for our stakeholders, because everyone's got to want this to continue, otherwise it won't. So, it's a really important document for a range of reasons, but I totally agree. Getting that story right across the whole corridor is really critical.
And we're mindful and knowledgeable about the critical things that NZTA will be looking for in this report that will become compelling.
Through the chair, that is absolutely 100% right.
Yeah, good one. And last question to you, Phil, with regard to the marketing material. Mindful that Sunday is a real opportunity for us to be able to promote what's happening in Hamilton to Aucklanders. Have we matched that also with any kind of events that are happening in Hamilton to be able to attract people in, or even vice versa to events that are happening in Auckland?
I totally agree with you, and the answer is yes. We are working with the tourist agencies to identify opportunities at both ends for the use of the train, and I was talking to the team about that just last week. So there'll be more to come on that, but we're certainly wanting to use the train, or use the train is the message that we want people to hear when they're thinking about events in both areas.
Yeah, good. And it enhances the whole weekend, surely, you can romanticize the
use of a train to be able to get to an event, etc. Thank you. And the Waikato tourism is very good at being able to put our case to others.
Yes, yeah, they have been excellent. Yeah.
There's no other questions. Thanks very much, James. And just acknowledging the thoroughness and your considered responses to the range of questions and queries that the committee have had over the period of time regarding the work and the operation of Te Huia. So thanks very much. So if I can have a mover and seconder, please, for the, okay, I'm looking at Angela and then Jen. There's nothing further. I'll put that recommendation to receive that end of trial review update report. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. So we'll come to the penultimate report now, is in terms of the PT operations update. And I've got Vincent and Kana to present. And Vincent, you'll also, as part of it, provide that information that Liz sought around cancellations. So welcome to you both, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Chair and the committee members. So before we jump into the last report, I just wanted to address the question being raised about the high cancellation rate that you've seen from the NZTA report. I guess a simple answer is that it's really down to how the data was conceived and presented by NZTA. So I guess in Waikato context, our definition for trip completion is that the trip must be completed from the start to the end. It must stop at all the scheduled bus stops. If there was a missed bus stop within the journey due to roadwork or technical GPS issues, it will be flagged as an incomplete trip. But that does not mean the trip was not carried out. It just means the trip was not completed in full. So I guess that 6% you see from the NZTA report is actually the percentage of the trip not completed in full, was not the trip cancellations. So we have written to NZTA to ask for correcting this error. I can also report in terms of the actual trip cancellation across the entire bus network is about 0.3%, which is in line or better than other medium-sized PT network across the country. With the PT operations update report, it's a big report. There's a lot of information and data. So with your permission, Chair, I would like to take the report as read.
Yes.
And maybe I'll pass on to Kana. So Kana will probably highlight some of the key things from the report.
Good morning, everyone. I briefly highlight this term's report. So firstly, I speak about the overall PD performance over the financial year 24-25. Total annual bus and rail patronage has increased by 6.7%, and the fare revenue has increased by 42%. We have achieved the public funding fare private funding share target, which is set by NZTA, that is 13.3%, but we achieved 15%. Regarding Q2, April to June PT performance, we have seen the reduced patronage across the region for the first time since COVID. That was reduced by 3.9% over all the region. This may be impacted by the fare increase that took place a year ago. Also, the fact we have not delivered major network improvements over the course of the year. The Huia patronage had reduced by 42%. That is mainly affected by the truck closures in Auckland. Again, fare has increased by 11% on 1st July this year. We will monitor the further impact on the patronage and fare revenue. I would like to point one thing from a customer engagement campaign. So our customer engagement team has delivered 12 campaigns. That includes the Te Huia's 4th birthday, and we had a Be a Great Passenger campaign. We put posters on the board here. And lastly, we have a question about rebranding. So I explain why we are rebranding now. So the branding project has discussed publicly through the RTP process, and it has been discussed multiple times at RTC and this committee. Over the past 2 decades, our service has grown significantly beyond the Bus It brand. Typically, we have diversity in logos. We have Flex and Te Huia, Bus It, Total Mobility, Community Transport, and etc. So now we are undertaking a review of public transport brand strategy to ensure it reflects the full scope of our services. At this point, we have no decisions around the naming of the brand. That will be considered carefully as part of the rebranding process. Now back to Chair.
Okay, thank
Sorry,
you.
if I also
Vincent.
add, just around the rebranding. So the committee will be aware that WRC is going through a major contract renewal exercise. And we are planning to retender 85% of our bus network probably next year, early next year. So this also presents an opportunity, I guess, for us to review the overall branding and livery of the bus service, which can be implemented through the new contract. I guess that's the other sort of factor that we are considering.
Thank you. Roger.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Look, it's really good to see that Waipa is the star of the public transport network. And it would be really interesting to look deeper into that and see, we know that there are some of the factors which are the increased frequency, double-decker buses, the increased quality of the transport, etc. But it could also be a change in culture, that there is more of a move now towards public transport. And that's, of course, really interesting for us to look at, and whether, in fact, it's moving us closer to that time when there is a real need for the local public transport to be introduced. And perhaps the question you did supply for us, as you remember, the breakdown on departures and times, and the fact of how it was being used as local transport. So it was quite low at that time, something like 6%. But I'm wondering whether we could get, say, another 6 monthly look at that breakdown. And I'm quite happy to send the template through to you if that's possible. But for us, particularly with Cambridge connections, it's very important for us to keep really on top of that. So I'd be interested in your comments in that regard.
Yes, I think absolutely we're happy to supply any data, and we have a lot more sort of data in terms of the origin and destination of your trips, and so all the boarding and lighting information. So we're happy to supply that. Yep, just send it through.
Any other questions or Phil, you?
Maybe I'll just add to that, Roger, which is that you noticed on the Transport Working Group list, there was some work to look at the bus network for Cambridge. All of that data will be used to inform that process as well. So Catherine will be leading that work shortly, and that's all part of the same thing.
Any other questions or comments? No? Jen.
There's a lot of really good news in here, right? So that's awesome. Not sure if you wanted my comments now or whether we're moving on. The courtesy signage on the back of the bus, I've obviously already sent through some feedback. But yeah, personally really do think it would be great if it was further on the right and further up high. I realise the intention here is to be at eye level for the following drivers, but as I explained, I think it's the driver behind often that first car that also needs to see it. And I think the text is not large enough, especially when you compare it to the other, well, the text size that is obviously recommended for the advertisement, I'm going to take as a guide as being effective. So that's kind of what I was going for when we first brought these ideas up. And then otherwise, really, really good. But that's what I was going for. Happy to hear from others.
Angela.
Yeah, like Jen, lots of good news in here. And if I could just compliment the team on different ways of engagement as well with the One Tech students, with the posters at the back. Also the family pass for the buses during the holidays, since Te Huia is not running, I'm sure is a real welcome activity for those with kids. Down to all the different ways that we're communicating as well, the newsletter, the increase in socials as well. So well done to the team on that. Also with the corporate concessions as well. Fantastic that two big corporates are extending their contracts, and hoping that we're seeing more in that space as well. So look forward to hearing about other corporates coming on board as well. That's it from me. Thank you.
Doesn't appear to be any further questions or comments. Okay. Moved by Mayor Adrian. If I can have a seconder for that. Seconded by Maxine. If there's nothing further, I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thanks to you both, and for the comprehensive nature of the reporting. Thank you. Now we will move to the final report on the agenda, and I'll ask Phil to introduce that in a moment. But Mayor Adrian, you need to go okay. Now I was going to provide an opportunity before you exited on this report, but okay. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a report bringing together the conversations that began in this committee in February and were continued through the workshop that we had on the 5th of May, and present a summing up of that insight and some suggested way forward for the mandate and the wide remit that this committee has had to making some recommendations for the future council in the new triennium. It is here really for discussion. Pass to you, Chair.
Okay. Jen.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really logical structure that you've proposed, Phil, so keen to go into it with that. So happy to move eventually. The key points that I'm keen to see next triennium is that the opportunity for interregional things are really up there, so that the terms of reference, for example, to include that invitation straight away to the neighbouring regional councils and for RTC mainly, but potentially also the subcommittee. And that behind that sits a schedule of engagement with the TAs proportional to the amount of bus services that they have for the public transport subcommittee in particular. So a really, really close relationship as
Can you pull the
yeah,
microphone?
a really
closer,
close
thank you?
relationship with Hamilton City Council, as Maxine talked about very earlier in the meeting, and then whether grouped or separate with the other TAs, so that they have full confidence in our council to administer that regional public transport rate to the it having been at least heard fully of all the councillors, or a subset if that's what they decide, from the TAs, that we are getting their input into all of the service levels that they expect for their community. Yeah.
Just before we go any further, I just wanted to go to Maxine, because you'll see there's a third recommendation on the screen. In your report, you have the first two, and I'll ask Maxine to comment in a moment. So the third one is an additional suggestion in terms of some advocacy, etc., to the RTC subcommittee in terms of that partnership approach, and probably picking up the
That's
theme
exactly
that
it,
you have outlined.
Especially that appreciation of the contribution of the infrastructure.
So I thought
Go for
it's on the table now, and I'll ask Maxine, so then that can be part of the discussion. So Maxine.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. I really appreciate that. And
we've done a bit of tweaking.
Yeah, you have. You've refined the wording a bit, and it makes very good sense. And it doesn't change any of the intention actually that we had in terms of that real partnership approach. And we know that happens behind the scenes with our staff and your own, in being able to build the agenda and priorities to be able to be delivered through this. And I wanted to be able to see that also happen at the elected member level. And by doing that, I think it also raises up the status of this work to councillors who don't sit around this table. And if I think about Hamilton City Council, it enters into a couple of lines in a report, which can easily get
not enough attention,
or without the due consideration that the importance of this work can deliver. And I also believe that it helps us to be able to, as members of this or the proposed subcommittee, to be able to take this kaupapa back to our own councils for that, and also have the opportunity to build those relationships across our councils and others that sit around this committee. So the intention is very much about a collaboration and partnership model. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay, no, thank you. So that's on the table as part of the discussion. And Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just reflect back on this triennium and where this committee has came from and where it's got to, and really do appreciate the collaboration that we have had around the table, of keeping our eye on the end goal and working towards it, and appreciate the staff effort that has gone as well into writing this report and getting us to this point. I really like where this is heading, especially around, I suppose, for those of us who do sit on both committees, RTC plus PT, just the efficiencies that this new forum, I suppose, will provide in regards to, staff effort for reports, elected member travel time plus staff travel time as well, and all the resource that goes into 2 different meetings. Making it on one day just makes a lot of sense for, respecting people's diaries as well as staff effort and duplication as well. also to the points around that partnership approach, yeah, I really agree with that, especially as we do work towards the MSP and all that that entails. Keeping that big picture stuff, I suppose, with FPIC and allowing this future subcommittee to get down to the detail, which I think has been some of the frustration, maybe this triennium, that, yeah, that we needed a little bit more. But yeah, happy with where this is heading. And for those of us still around next triennium, yeah, just to move forward with those relationships that we have built and that partnership approach, I think we could achieve quite a bit next triennium. So yeah, happy to second if you don't have a seconder.
Okay, no,
Thank you.
thank you. Any other comments or questions in terms of the proposition? Yeah. Robert, did you want to make any? Okay. Yeah, I note you're nodding. That's fine. Okay. Phil, anything in conclusion? Okay. Well, there's nothing further. I've got some comments, but they'll be wrapped up in my final comments at the end. So we've got a mover and seconder. Jen's moved and seconded by Angela. If there's nothing further, I will put those three recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. But I think what you've just passed also it also shows the significance, where there is proposed change, those early conversations, working through some of the issues and having that input around the table. So it's not just a one-stop shop at the end, here's a recommendation. So I think that's been a good example in terms of people being able to have input, the socialisation of the proposition, and then Phil and the team being able to then work that through and engage with their colleagues and then end up with where we've ended up today. So before we close, I just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, my congratulations to Jen in terms of her addition. So yes, and certainly you've replaced Sarah, because at the start of the committee we had some of her family from time to time. But certainly this really brings us, and particularly now passing the resolutions that you have, the completion in this triennium. This is the final meeting of the subcommittee for the triennium, but also final in respect of the current arrangements. But it's been an interesting 3 years from formation, and then the committee and those advising us have worked through. So the initiative of the partners was to come together in terms of the subcommittee. But I think some previous speakers have also noted there is that challenge of bringing together operational aspects together with sort of thinking in the strategic thinking and direction space. Maybe, and the challenge of one or the other can subsume or override the others from time to time. So I think the basis of the experience in the last 3 years has obviously given rise now to what you've just decided. However, notwithstanding that, and it's been exhibited today, I think the information provision, the sharing across all of the partners, government agencies and other entities, I think has actually been quite significant. And as noted earlier in the first report, in Phil's report, the list of work that's been undertaken, it's not till we actually see some of that, the breadth of topics within our terms of reference and the range of issues that the committee or the subcommittee have dealt with. I really would like to acknowledge the collegial, the collaborative, and the respectful way that members have contributed around the committee table. You've probed those who have provided advice, but again, in a way that whilst you don't always agree with the advice, it has been that respect shown to those who provide it. And particularly in working around the country, that's not always a way of operating. So I really do commend the committee for that approach. I'd like to thank Angela as Deputy Chair. And we obviously engage and talk from time to time in terms of the issues. And that, for me, as independent chair, has been really helpful, and particularly just getting a greater sense of some of the local issues that are going down, where perhaps some of the challenging issues might be, and that ability to be able to then work those through and hopefully reach a reasonable conclusion. So, thanks very much for that, Angela. I'd like to acknowledge Phil King and his team, and also, and I did earlier on in terms of Phil Hazeldine, his team, other partners and agencies and entities in terms of their staff and consultants who have all contributed to the input and the advice that we've received over the last 3 years. And I think a theme of all that, it's been very considered input, certainly been extremely helpful, and I appreciate the way that you have all interacted with the committee. And I think people, you should take heart from that, because that's reflected not just today, but throughout the last 3 years, and then in the compliments that you have heard and acknowledgements from the members who sit around the table. And again, that's not always reflected in terms of working in other places in terms of that. So, but I think that's just part of that mutual respect on the way through. I'd also, in particular, like to acknowledge Brooke on my right, Dave and LJ, who have supported the committee, but also the support that you have provided to me over the last 3 years as independent chair. It has been and given my comments, it really has been a pleasure to have been your chair. Hopefully, I've been inclusive. I've provided the opportunity for you to contribute and have created a relatively, within the reasonable constraints of local government and all of that, a relatively informal environment for those conversations to actually occur, not just through the chair, but in terms of you as members when we've discussed and looked at a number of issues. And finally, I think all those who are physically around the table, you've all thrown your hat in for the ballot box in October. Really wish you all the best in that process. It's certainly not something that is in my DNA. So I take my hat off to anyone who gets into the, well, any electoral process for that matter. So hopefully that all goes well for you. So I won't be seeing you as the chair of the Future Proof Public Transport Subcommittee, but hopefully I'm still seeing a number of you around the Future Proof Implementation Committee table. So that's me. Thanks very much and all the best. Angela.
Yeah, just as Deputy Chair, yeah, thank you for your expertise and your calm demeanour that you do bring to the chairing. Yeah, I think it's been a really successful 3 years. So yeah, thank you for your leadership at the helm, and yeah, I've appreciated our discussions as well. So yeah, thank you very much on the behalf of the committee, and open it up to anyone else who wants to add something through the chair.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, Phil, are you closing us? Karakia, please.
Thank you, Chair. Unahia mai tu uru tapa nui, kia watia, kia mama, te nākau, te tinana, te hininaro. I te aro takatu, koe rā e rongo, e whakaria aki ki runga kia tina, umie, huie, tā kia. Thanks, everyone.
And we have lunch in our normal place. Thank you. Meeting closed.